So next up, please welcome Liesbet. Thank you. Who's going to share a presentation, e-learning on palliative care and end-of-life care in ALS for all caregivers accompanying ALS patients in Belgium. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. Oh, hold. Presentation. I can already introduce myself. It's the first slide, it's fine. So hi everyone, I'm Liesbet. I am the liaison for ALS Liga Belgium. So briefly what my job entails, I support patients in their home environment to maintain quality of life as well as possible and to make sure or support them to stay at home as long as possible if this is their wish. Today, however, I am here to tell you more about a project that we have worked on for the last 2 years and that we launched on the 21st of June this year, which is, of course, as we all know, World ALS Day. And now I really do need my slides to move on. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Okay. So in September 2020, we received a project call from the King Boudewijn Foundation and the fund Marianne and Jean Mechelink. This specific call was for projects concerning support of professionals and volunteers in communicating and talking about palliative care with patients and their loved ones. This did not concern specifically ALS, but of course for us this was very interesting, and we started to think about how we could make something work in the context of that project call. Since multiple participants in the project and strong collaborations were given preference, we set to work. So the idea was to create an e-learning on a national scale, so for the whole of Belgium. I don't know if this is broadly known. Belgium is a bilingual country, trilingual in fact, but I will spare you the details on that, mainly Dutch and French. So we wanted to create an e-learning for the whole of Belgium for all caregivers accompanying ALS patients, their families, their loved ones throughout Belgium in Dutch and in French. To this end, we wanted to focus, sorry, I forgot to go to the next slide. To this end, we wanted to focus on knowledge acquisition and attitude formation, and we wanted to start from a patient-centered and experiential approach. Given that we wanted to highlight all the aspects around ALS and feed this back into the conversation on palliative and end-of-life care, we soon realized that we needed multidisciplinary expertise, which is why we started contacting all the neuromuscular reference centers throughout Belgium and asked them to participate in the project. These are the centers who provide the multidisciplinary care and follow-up for most patients in Belgium. So they were well placed. We are very happy to say that all of the centers, all 7, well 8, but 1 is in collaboration with each other, accepted and played their part in creating the e-learning as it is today. We also made it a point of contacting all the professional associations, so whose members could possibly support patients and their families in a home situation or in institutions, residential care, and asked them also for their written support to create a stronger foundation for the application, but they also agreed to evaluate the e-learning if it was accepted and we launched it, and to communicate about it with their members. So we are speaking about speech therapists, occupational therapists, psychologists, doctors, nurses, and so on. So we wanted to make a broad spectrum to contact as many people as possible. And needless to say, as I am today giving my presentation, the project we entered for approval was accepted with great enthusiasm. And I want to take this moment to thank all the centers and their speakers for their collaboration, because without them we could not have done it. You can see them all here on the slides. And of course, beside that, we gave presentations ourselves as well. That's to say, Evie Riviers, our CEO and chairwoman, and myself. So then, mid-2021, we could start implementing what we had planned. So what was the goal we wanted to achieve? We all know that the rapidly progressive nature of ALS makes starting the conversation about care near the end timely, very crucial, so that the patient, their loved ones, can consider this end-of-life care. However, experience has taught us that too often the conversation is avoided by patients, loved ones, even caregivers. As a result, medical decisions often have to be made very quickly, especially in cases of urgency, and sometimes there is not even time for a conversation. What does this result in? Lack of symptom control, not enough psychosocial, spiritual support, and mainly a lower quality of life. What we aim at is to break through the taboo still shrouding palliative care today. We feel that it is still associated too strongly with terminal care, which often leads people to defer from this very important conversation. In this context, the ALS Liga ALS Liga Belgium has in the past called for a renaming to supportive care, to steer away a bit from this terminal undertone and to make it more accessible. So in short, the goal with e-learning is to inform anyone and everybody who comes into contact with ALS about what it entails and how the different aspects of ALS can be implemented in this palliative care conversation. We want them to explore their strengths and their boundaries and inform them about what is possible in the field of, or what is possible in general in palliative care in various settings. And our hope, of course, is that this will lead to a higher quality of life for all ALS patients up until the very end. So practically then, we wanted to, as I said, bilingual e-learning. So we have the various hospitals, the centers throughout Belgium, who speak either mainly French or mainly Dutch. So we decided that everybody could make a presentation in their own language. So they made a presentation, they did a recording, and what we did is we transcribed every presentation and provided subtitles for it. So what does it mean? For example, if a French-speaking participant enters the e-learning, he will get, or she will get, all the information in French, and the Dutch presentations will be subtitled in French, and vice versa. That's the idea. Furthermore, each section of the e-learning is followed by a few questions. To get certificates at the end of the e-learning, the participant must pass on all subjects. The profile that was made in the beginning, where they can choose what their profession is, makes it possible to do the e-learning in various settings. It's quite extensive, so we wanted to make that possible so it can be convenient for the participants themselves. At the end of the e-learning, it is also possible to give an evaluation, because we, of course, wanted to know the positive as well as the negative, and so that we could adapt where possible, and also for the future, if we would make any more e-learnings, if we saw that this caught on, we could really improve on it. The plan is that if people have any further questions after finishing the e-learning, we will organize an online meeting every few months as needed, where they can be addressed, and we will invite the presenters of the specific questions so they can be answered. At this point, there haven't been any, or a lot of questions, let's say, so we will feel it out and see if it is needed in the future, or we will contact everybody at one point and just see if there is a need to come together on this. And then maybe almost most importantly, even though the project call was aimed at professionals and volunteers, we really wanted to make it available for literally everybody. So we created a separate profile, which I will go into later. It's not necessarily a difference in information for patients and their loved ones. So anybody who's close to them can also enter the e-learning, and the system identifies when this profile is chosen that questions do not need to be answered. So people can just choose which information they want, at what time, and leave aside what they don't want to know. That's a bit the idea. And here you can see the contents of the e-learning. So the first 4 sections, the last one is then split up again in 4 different sections, are general. They are for every profile, whichever one is chosen. So the palliative landscape, what is ALS, briefly, what we do as an organization, and then we go into the specific points of attention of ALS, and we highlight what is important so that it can be fed afterwards into the conversation. And then the 5th section, the early care planning, so the palliative care conversation, end-of-life conversation. We have a general one for everyone, and then we go into the different profiles. So if we have one that has extra information focused on doctors, focused on paramedics, or more focused on patient and loved ones. Yes, update. So I haven't put any numbers in it because I pulled the information last week because I wanted to have the most recent updates. So when we launched the e-learning, we communicated about it through various channels, through our newsletter, emails, social media, and so on. We also contacted the professional associations who gave their written consent, and they evaluated and communicated about it also through their own channels. In the meanwhile, we have also arranged for accreditation for physiotherapists, which means that aside from the certificate at the end, they can actually register education points officially with their own organization. Also, at this time, we're working on the same thing, so also the accreditation for doctors and nurses. At this point, for this I do need my notes, we already have 60 participants, mainly paramedics and relatives of patients. We have seen a surge in participation of physiotherapists at the point that we communicated about the accreditation, so we're very hopeful that this will do the same for doctors and nurses. We also get it, official support of their profession, it's always good. In the evaluation, we ask about the experience in general, but also the learning process. Most participants finished e-learning in 1 or 2 sessions, which is less than we thought it would be, so that's perfect, actually. About 75% already had a conversation about palliative care in the past, but felt more confident now about what palliative care entailed. 50% felt more confident to actually have the conversation with a patient, and the others did not necessarily feel more confident, but they did feel that they knew better where they could find information or where they could refer the patient to. And all participants, luckily, said that they would recommend the e-learning to colleagues or friends or family. The only, I don't know if I can call it an issue, thing that was noticed was that with the 2 languages, when a Dutch-speaking participant follows the French-spoken presentations, they needed some repeats to actually attain the information. I'm almost finished. Next. So yes, on our website, you will find a link that takes you straight to the eLearning portal where you can register. The program is free for anyone who is in interest to learn more on ALS and the context of the palliative care conversation. Of course, in this presentation, it is important to note that they are, as I said, only available in Dutch and French, so if you speak any of these languages, please feel free to take a look. Furthermore, it's important to keep in mind that the parts about the palliative landscape and the legislation and so on are, of course, specific to Belgium and do not necessarily correspond to other countries. But in any case, if you're curious, wherever you are, whatever language you speak, please feel free to take a look. Everybody's welcome. And we are, at the very least, very excited to have been able to present this project today. And thank you for your attention.
Liesbet, thank you. I think it's a fantastic resource, and just not only for professionals, but for patients as well. Do we have any questions for Liesbet? Yes, there's one over here.
Yeah.
Death with dignity is in the thoughts of people living with MND. Do you have a tool to talk about this topic?
A specific tool? Well, we hope with this e-learning that we create more opening to have this conversation at the very least, and that people feel more comfortable to talk about it, and that at this crucial time, that at this very end, that there has been had a conversation, and that it can be a process, that it is not something that is delayed up until the very end, but that is a process because people, their boundaries change, their mind changes, situations change. So we hope that it creates more of a process than a final conversation that is absolutely necessary.
Any more questions? You mentioned kind of very often palliative care is introduced very late, at a very late point in somebody's disease progression. At what point would you suggest patients access your project?
Well, I think we need to feel it out. It's different for everybody. What I tend to do, I see patients after diagnosis, and if I feel that the patient could, or their family, anyone involved, could emotionally cope, I do tend to broach the subject at least, and then see how they react. I at least give the information about the organizations who work on this specifically, because we have palliative care teams who work for people at home as well, specifically. And I just tell them, look, you can leave this information aside, but at least you have it, and when the time is there that you want to talk about it, just contact them. But I try to talk about it very early, and if people say, okay, no, fine, then I just let them know that if they want to talk about it, if this point comes, we are available, we are there for them.
Great.
That's a bit the idea.
Thank you. Any more questions? No, I think that's, thank you.
Thank you so much.